You may recognize today's guest from Netflix's Sex, Love, and Goop. Darshana Avila stands at the intersection of trauma, truth, and erotic power, helping people reclaim pleasure as a path to self-actualization. You are going to love today's guest, and you are here with Leah Piper and myself, Dr. Willow Brown of the Sex Reimagined Podcast. Thank you so much for all your amazing likes, shares, and subscribes. They really support the show and get the word out.
Okay, you guys, this interview is so good. So please tune in, turn on, and fall in love with Darshana.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined Podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
So tell us how you got started with this work, because I know you've been doing it for decades now. And what was sort of the moment in your life where you were like, I really need to help people with their sexuality? Like, this is an issue.
You know, it's funny because that's not how it went.
Oh.
It is way more born out of my personal explorations and the chapter of my life where I looked around. I had done everything the way our mainstream script would indicate one should do success. So I built a corporate career and I got married and I bought a home, and it was like marching along until it wasn't. Things looked good on the outside and they didn't feel nearly as good on the inside. And I separated from the marriage. That was the first piece, while amidst a really big spiritual awakening. And then when the marriage ended and I started dating and fucking around and finding out, as it were, I had a sexual awakening where I realized that there was so much I didn't know about myself sexually and about what intimacy could be. And so the rest of the trappings of that, you know, normatively successful life stopped fitting. And it was just kind of like something that was too tight that I needed to get out of. And so I quit the corporate job. And in the beauty, and I say I was blessed with the gift of my own ignorance and naivety at the time, that I was like, I'm just going to become a coach, you know, like just no big, like I'm going to become a coach and I'll probably help other corporate types have more fulfilling spiritual lives, because that seemed to track with what was going on for me. I was like, I could, if I could do this for myself, like maybe I could help other people. But life really kept showing me that sexuality was the focus. And much like in my personal journey, it was all born of a desire to feel sex and spirit integrated. That's really the essence of what I do, even though I've taken it in a more secular direction and my body of work. If you look at it on the surface, you may not see it as spiritual practice. And yet for me, it is deeply that, and for many of my clients as well. And that's a long story short answer to how I got here.
I think that's probably something that really resonates with a lot of people who are in sort of the sacred sexuality sphere of the sexuality, niche. Yeah. So I'm curious, what do you bring the spiritual elements to your work as a sexuality educator and body worker? Can you say a little bit about that? How that intersects?
And what your mention of sacred sexuality, it's very on point, because in the early days, it was Tantra that was informing a lot of my explorations. And it was also coming into contact with, shall we say, some of the shadows and the underbelly of different communities and practices that really steered me in the direction of a more secular, trauma-informed, and justice-oriented way of holding my practice. And so this is deeply sacred work for me. Like that has never changed, whether or not I am chanting mantras or delivering, you know, a very more academically oriented or politically slanted, like, you know, teaching on something. Like, it's sacred work because our bodies are sacred, our sex is sacred, we are sacred. And the way that it shows up as something spiritual, I think, is in what goes on for my clients and my students when they really inhabit themselves in a more unfettered way than they ever have before. And they get in touch with their own sacredness, and they can experience altered states of consciousness or expanded perceptions about who they are and how they get to be and what love and intimacy and sex can look like. I don't really know what is more spiritual than that. It's not about some figurehead on high so much as really tapping into the sacredness within all of us and within our relating. And that's something that I feel very blessed to get to help facilitate and guide on a regular basis.
Oh, one of the things that you speak to is erotic wholeness.
Yes.
And I feel like that's kind of what you're describing right now. And I'm just so curious, like, how do you see this erotic wholeness as different from a lot of people's ideas about what sex, intimacy, and relationship coaching is? Like, a lot of people hear, oh, a love coach or a relationship coach, and they may not have sort of the depth of understanding that you're speaking to right now. So how would you kind of like, give them a little bit more deeper understanding?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, my body of work, Erotic Wholeness, I mean, it's on me that I've chosen a name that really requires some explanation, but that's part of the fun of it. The invitation, first of all, is to expand your definition of what eroticism is. Like right here, right now, many of us hear that word and associate it very exclusively with sex and perhaps even a very like salacious pornographic form of sexuality. But the definition that I'm going by draws from life force energy, vitality, creativity as how we understand eroticism. And so that aliveness channels into our sex, but it's also present anywhere that our passion is, anywhere that we are building, creating, caring, tending. And so your emotions and sensations, your relationships, your activism, your art, your parenting, your organizing, that is a channel for your erotic energy just as surely as sex is. And in the early days of my explorations and my practice, everything was super sex centric. And I started recognizing both in myself and my clients how that was limiting us. And it was, it's like you're looking at a slice of the pie, not the whole.
Right. Yeah.
So I again, like you heard me use an example earlier of like the things that feel tight and no longer fit. I am one who will be like, okay, I'm busting out of here. And so like that was yet another moment. It's like, we're going to bust out of the like just talking about sex mode, even though that is a lot of what people seek me out for, right? Like they want a transformation in how they inhabit their bodies, how they show up in their sex life, their access to pleasure, their intimacy skills. But then what goes on is it feeds into all these different areas. And the wholeness piece of this is a nod to, we have such a strong acculturation to viewing ourselves as broken, fragmented, less than. And the wholeness is an invitation to really see all the parts of ourselves as necessary and beautiful, including the parts that we may not like, including the parts that we may not have taken the time to get to know, and that we are our truest, most authentic, most resource self, when instead of pushing apart and compartmentalizing, we're actually inviting all of those parts of ourselves into the mix. And then we bring our discernment, right? Like, I mean, and this has become far more popular since like internal family systems really took off, IFS or parts work, which very much informs my practice. And I was introduced to parts work before I was introduced to IFS through some other schools and of thought and what have you. So a lot of this has to do with getting into our shadowy self and getting into our protective strategies and saying, what's actually going on here? And is this me allowing the fullness of my eroticism, my potential, my power to manifest itself? Or am I playing small, playing safe, stories that are very familiar, I'm sure, to anybody listening?
Yeah. I mean, I love that that you integrate the somatic parts work, right? Because there's we always say the issues are in the tissues, and there's all these places like inside of our body where we're holding on to the resistance, the doubt, the fear. And then there's places in our body that just want to break out of the box. They want to expand, evolve. They want to be in rapture and joy and bliss. And so how do we get all those places onto the same page? So this whole concept of erotic wholeness, and really even just like seeing eroticism more as like life force energy and chi and vitality and longevity. You know, I'm right there with you, sister. High fives to
Yes.
all
Yeah.
that shit.
We're very much speaking the same language.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I think there's so much to unpack here because there's so many areas where people are seeking support, from being in a long-term relationship where the sexual energy is flatlined and they don't know how to bring the spark back. They love each other deeply, but like they're not having sex. And then you've got people who've had sexual trauma or cultural trauma or something that inhibits them from being able to attract, I don't know if it's the love in their life or the sexuality or the sex that they want, or whatever sort of suppresses the part of them that says, I don't get to have it. I'm not allowed to have it. And then you just have people that feel like they're struggling with sexual dysfunction. You know, they come too fast, or they don't come at all, or they can't get hard, or they can't, like, everything hurts inside, you know? And so then you have that physiological pain. So I'm kind of curious, what are the main doors that people are walking through when they come to work with you?
Pretty much everything you just named.
Okay.
the caveat being that presently in my practice, I am mostly supporting female-bodied folks. So I occasionally work with male-bodied folks, but usually it's when they are half of a couple that is coming to see me. And so less about erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation these days, and more about, you mentioned pain, you mentioned trauma that might be a direct overt trauma that someone has experienced. It might also be more cultural or developmental trauma, which is the misogyny and the patriarchy and capitalism and white supremacy and like these compounding systems of oppression that make up our dominant culture weigh heavily on us. And that phrase, the issues are in the tissues, like, yes, because the vast majority of the people who are coming to me have spent time in therapy and they're not necessarily new to their work, and it's taken them as far as it could.
Right.
And I've had moments like that in my journey. You know, I'm somebody who has not just been on a path of spiritual seeking, but personal growth, personal development, healing, like, you know, whatever name you want to call it by. And there are times, there are seasons when talking about it and going through a more cognitive mental process can be really, really helpful. And telling our stories and being witnessed compassionately, like all of that has its place. And then,
Right.
and it kind of, it's like, wait, stop. Wait, what's going on here? I hit a wall, I hit a plateau, something else is needed. And that's usually where I'm coming in, or where people are coming to me, which is because I do very hands-on, hands-in work. Like my tongue-in-cheek way of introducing myself when somebody's like, what do you do? And I actually did this at a party last night and it kind of backfired. It usually like, because I'm usually a good read about who can I whip this one out.
Who can I say these words to?
Right. What I say is, I'm a professional pussy stroker. And usually it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I actually hear what I think I heard. It's like, yes. Because my work sits at the intersection of, as a sexological body worker, I'm doing hands-on, hands-in explorations with my clients. And we welcome pleasure and we welcome arousal. And it's worked with in a really beautiful, sacred way with a lot of professionalism and a lot of integrity. That's a rare combination. Right. Yeah. I mean, really, like what experience do we have where we can walk into a container where we get to open ourselves up to a pretty like unprecedented extent in terms of our erotic expression and in terms of our sexual response, but it's not necessarily reciprocal. Like, that's poor. It's either medical or it's like a partnered exchange, and this is either in both.
Right. Well, I'm so curious, like, what percentage of the yoni owners, pussy owners that you work with, go to, like, how many of them stay in more of a therapeutic experience, and then how many of them actually take themselves to eroticism while they're in session and while they're working with you? Say that again.
With
Yeah.
me directly?
Yeah, with you, which also leads me to a second layer of this question, which is like, you are weaving in basically all aspects of what it means to be a human: spiritual, physical, emotional, psychological, sexual,
Yes.
right? And so I'm imagining that, like, when somebody comes to you, they're not just coming in for a single session. I mean, maybe sometimes there, but they probably have like a full journey with you. So I'm curious, from also like an entrepreneurial perspective, like, what is your package? What is your deal? How long do you work with people? And then, like, do they kind of come in and it's more therapeutic, and then over time they start to open up their eroticism more? Or what's the sort of typical journey that you see women go through?
Yeah, thank you for that. And you're 100% right that this is not a one and done experience. So either I work in intensive formats because thanks to Netflix, thanks to having a broader platform, I have clients literally have flown from the other side of the globe to spend a few days with me, or people who are in different states. For those who are local, I'm in Oakland, California, the San Francisco Bay Area. I offer the possibility of working with me over an arc of time where we have shorter sessions, usually at an every other week cadence for 3 months minimum. And
Okay.
so it's either 3 days full on minimum or 3 months at a paced out cadence.
Okay.
And that's something that I've honed over time, in the
Yeah.
early days. Like, it's a lot of, because this is something. There are other sexological body workers in the world. There are many other somatic experiencing practitioners. So some of the modalities that I'm certified in, other people are practicing, and it continues to be that the way I practice and my body of work is unique, even among people that overlap with me in certain ways. And again, in the same way that I went from a focus on sex to a focus on eroticism over time, and paying attention to what was going on, the same thing has happened with the way that I work and the journey that I take people through. And it's a 4-phase journey. And the first phase is very much about relationship building and nervous system regulation. And so, yes, when you say, does it start out a little more therapeutic? To some extent, and that has a lot to do with who's in the room. And
Yeah.
what do they need?
Yeah.
Everybody needs some nervous system tending.
For sure.
Some with really complex trauma histories more so. And so that portion can take a significantly longer time. And that would be the determining factor. Like, if someone's like, hey, I live in, Kalamazoo and I want to come do an immersion with you, like, I got to get a sense of what they're actually working with and what their intentions are to know whether or not 3 days, 4 days, like full on, is actually going to be of service or not.
Right.
But people who have the option of seeing me for a longer arc, like, I have some clients who have been with me for years, and that doesn't mean that they're necessarily coming in every week or every other week, but it means that we do a chapter and then they go off and they live that experience. And then it's like, okay, next level, like, I'm ready. Like, I have several clients right now actively in my practice that's the reality. Like, we worked together a year ago, had some space. Oh, okay, back for the next round.
Yeah.
A lot of that has to do with it. It takes the time that it takes for
Yeah.
our nervous systems to recalibrate, for the psychological components of what we've lived through to kind of shape themselves in a new way, or for us to live with them in a different quality of relationship. So once that phase is tended to, then we move on to things that are more, you could say, like the foundation of somatics and the foundation of what it is to really embody yourself. How do you cultivate presence enough to track what's going on? Because if you can't do that, there's no way that you're going to ever be able to answer or advocate for what you want, what you like, what you don't. Which is really the underlying principle of so much of this, especially when we're talking about the fact that I mostly am supporting women and femmes. Like, we don't have the lived experience much of the time of ever really explored that as the central aspect of our sexuality. We understand ourselves as the object of another person's pleasure because that's what the dominant cultural script teaches us. So we people please the fuck out of our intimate lives, sometimes even thinking that it's like, oh yeah, this is for me, or I'm in my power, or I like this. And I'm not disparaging anybody's way of being sexual, and nor do I mean to like paint this with just a single brush. I'm speaking in generalities, and I'm speaking to what tends to be common for most of us is that because we have a very heteronormative way of learning about our sexuality, whatever our sexual orientation might be, that story goes something like man, woman is here to please the man. When the penis gets erect and has its ejaculation, we are done. Like it's a very, very narrow and simplistic way that most of us have learned about sex. I say the word sex, and you're probably thinking penis and vagina
intercourse. Yeah.
Right.
As opposed to sex gets to be a really expansive, creative, beautiful journey that you can define on your own terms. Mm-hmm. And one of the cool things is that because my work with my clients, this is my main instrument. If you're not watching this on video, I'm wiggling my very long fingers around. I use my hands on my clients, right? Like, so what's going on is that I am serving as a literal instrument for them to then, as we've established those fundamentals of embodiment, we've learned about consent, they've expanded their vocabulary and their scope of possibility about the ways they can be touched, the ways they can be pleasured. Then we're moving on to phase 3, which is when they actually start to allow more of this in and explore arousal for most people in like an unprecedentedly robust way. It's like, wait, what? It could be like that. And this is literally, one of the clients that I mentioned who's kind of back for another chapter, this is someone whose trauma history was so extensive that her body was on lockdown. Anything related to her genitals was liable to be painful unto itself. And if she ever got to the point of having an orgasm, she'd get migraines. Her body was just in such protest, even though she's in a beautiful, secure, loving marriage right now. And intellectually wants to be open to her partner. Mm-hmm. But her history has shaped herself in a different way. And so she's been 5 years into her own trauma healing journey. And about 1.5 years, 2 years into our work, I guess 2 years at this point, into our work together specifically. And it's just in the last couple of weeks that we've gotten to the place where the first thing she said to me, she's like, this is the first time that my genitals actually feel connected to my body. This is a woman who's approaching 40. And then the next session, she was like, I used to think there was no way I was going to ever want this for myself. She's like, I want this. This feels so good. I want this for me. It's can we just be with that for a minute?
Right.
Yeah, that's huge.
So disconnected from their body and felt so little agency coming home to themselves to that degree and thinking that all that could be possible is pain and awakening to holy moly, pleasure.
Yeah. This is for me too. It's not just for other. Yeah. Especially when we feel like that's been so out of reach. Or maybe our family of origin has normalized that, pleasure is for penis owners and service is for vulva owners. Yep. And that's the way the cookie crumbles. And then there's a bunch of epigenetic things to untie around, having generations of women in your line, never having an orgasm. Sex isn't for you. It's your duty. And it feels like for many of us, we're really far away from that. I think especially when you live on the coasts. But the truth is that's actually not true. A lot of people are still very much living in real time with that disassociation. Yeah. So how do you help someone track the sensation in their body and start to anchor that pleasure is for them? Is there a particular technique or something that you start with that you kind of paint a picture for someone who may be encountering this right now in their life, who may not be able to call you tomorrow and book something, but maybe they could try something tonight that would help them come home to themselves?
I love it. I love framing it that way because I'm going to speak to that. Somebody who wants to just start right here, right now. What I want to first introduce is that not all touch is created equal. And we know this intellectually. We certainly know this somatically, which is to say in our body. But where we trip up a lot is our vocabulary sucks when it comes to talking about touch. So most of us are like, oh, well, I want to be touched. And we use that word. Well, if I slap you, Are you going to have the same response as if I caress you? Probably not. So the first thing we actually get to do is get a more robust vocabulary going around touch. And we can experiment with ourselves. So you can experiment with running your nails across your skin as opposed to your finger pads. That would be scratching versus like a light feather touch. You can experiment with the palm of your hand grazing and stroking as opposed to squeezing, kneading, giving compression to yourself. This menu of touch is one of the things that I introduced to my clients fairly early on, because in order for us to have a fully consensual exchange, and for me to know that they can confidently speak for themselves and trust I'm going to be responsive, and vice versa, that if I say something to them, if I suggest something that, that we know we're speaking about the same thing, that vocabulary actually matters. So, and then it's not just the words coming out of the mouth, it's the physical action. So as we start to explore that more robust vocabulary, it's not, again, not just the words, it's the sensation of it. Well, what do I like? What are my preferences? Do I actually like being pinched? And it's like, I might hear that word and think no, but for me, if it's like a little pincer, like that kind of pinch, no. But if it's like a nice, like grab, like a, it depends on the body. There's a lot of subjectivity to touch.
Yeah, a lot of nuance.
Nuance, that's the word. And so most of us are not accustomed to touching and being touched in a nuanced way. And so we do these blanket statements of like, I like this, I don't like this. This is the same phenomenon that feeds into so many people, especially women of a certain age, right? Like women who, especially if you've like been in a relationship for a long time where you're continually performing your duties as opposed to having sex that you genuinely enjoy. Like, the story might go something like, I don't really like sex at all. Like, fine, I go along to get along. Like, yeah, I do this because it just makes life easier in my marriage, blah, 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 blah. And then, on the inside, they're like, I have no interest in sex. I can't wait for this to be over. Like, looking at the clock. My assumption there, and you know what they say about assumptions, but it's a pretty good one. Like, my assumption is you don't like the sex that you've been having, which does not mean that you don't like sex, period.
Right.
Touch. So touch is an integral part of sex. And if you're constantly being grabbed at, if your partner is doing what unfortunately many people who have not taken the time to explore and be educated, what do? We go for nipples, we go for clit, we go for the most sensitive parts of the body first.
Right.
Which all that's going to do is send the alarms up and fire. And so we might experience dissociation, we might experience irritation. And of course we don't want that. Right. So we tell ourselves a story that, I'm not interested in sex at all. Or the dissociation, which is to say, leaving your body. Your body is present and having an experience and your consciousness is going elsewhere. Like, that is a protective strategy. But ask yourself, if you are in an otherwise consenting relationship, do you want to be in a dynamic where you have to protect yourself from your partner's touch? Or might you want to consider that there are ways to do it better and to learn and grow?
And then talk about like the bridge that you're talking around how this affects other sectors of your life. Yes. When you feel like your body is on alert and you're flinching from touch because it's not, it's maybe unskillful, or, you're just it's two people who've been sexually uneducated, which is very easy to come across in all of our lives. We have a terrible sex education. So we're all kind of innocent in this department. And then to have, not to have the sex that you want, not knowing what the sex you want looks like. And so you're in this dynamic that you just described where someone's coming and grabbing or going straight to primary erogenous zones without turning you on.
Yes.
In a way that actually turns you on. That bleeds over. There's sometimes a corruption of trust. I can't trust my skin with my partner. It feels like they take instead of give. I feel on guard, and then all the things, how the ripple effect into every other sector of your life that causes. I think this is where the wholeness of the situation, and I think a lot of people compartmentalize sexuality and don't see how much it affects these other
All
zones.
of life. Yeah.
You are completely right. I mean, there's so much in that what we're talking about fundamentally is being able to identify and establish our boundaries, our preferences, and our desires. We're talking about feeling empowered and confident in our voice, believing that we have a right to the things feeling good, like whatever the things are, so if we're talking about touch, if we're talking about any other facet of relationship, if we're talking about this being in the workplace or the bedroom, like this is a lot to do with personal power. Agency is a word that I swap in for power. And so that is something that we are struggling with. And even a lot of women who might say, for instance, feel more on top of their game in other spheres of life, I would invite the question that, do you really and truly embody that, or are you performing it? Because many of us have gotten good at performing, and this is not to pathologize or blame anyone. The vast majority of us who've had this dominant cultural conditioning, what we're really, really great at is people pleasing. We're really, really good at playing the part that we believe we need to play, that curries favor, that keeps the relationships moving, that closes the deal, that puts politeness over genuine comfort. And we've been taught implicitly and explicitly to do this in every aspect of our life since we've been young. So of course it's going to show up in our sex life and our intimate life, unless, as we've said, like you make a choice to educate yourself. And the fact of not having been educated, you've already said it, Leah, like our dominant education around sexuality is horrific. It's awful.
Yeah, it's so bad.
And we're talking about sex, but the other piece that's really missing is intimacy. Very, very few of us know what it takes to cultivate true intimacy. And a lot of people listening to what we're talking about here might be saying like, yeah, but I don't know, like, what if I say this to my partner and they're offended, or they think that I don't like them, or, it's going to cause a fight. And so we do that. We do that a lot, worrying about another person's comfort and suppressing.
Great example.
But here's the truth of what's really going on there. Here's who's getting abandoned. Here's who's getting betrayed. You.
Yeah.
So underneath all of this is the self-betrayal.
And I imagine that there's a really important component that you're teaching your clients, which is how to communicate this. Because it's one thing to figure it out, to understand it, to know it in your body. I like this touch here, this touch, and to be attuned to the moment. Because as vulva owners, our moments are pretty erratic, and they change as our cycle changes, and as our resources within ourselves change. Like, have we been well slept? Have we been well fed? How are we doing? Sure. Are we well resourced? And so all of that can shift moment to moment. So it's this deep, fine attunement that you're talking about. But then the art and the skill of communicating that without sounding critical, without sounding judgmental, because that's one of the quickest ways to shut a lover down or a partner down.
Well, 100%. And it's not only a not sounding critical, not sounding judgmental. It's not being.
Yeah.
Which, take it from like the work, like I've got such a strong judgmental part in me. I am 100% a recovering people pleaser, perfectionist, all the things I'm talking about. I am my own laboratory.
Right.
So a lot of times, like we are criticizing and judging, but we're trying to package it into pretty words. And like most people's like BS meter can pick up on that.
You can feel that. Yeah.
So what we actually want to do is cultivate like a genuine openness, a giving what is the phrase I'm looking for here? An assumption of positive intent in all directions, not seeing our partner as our adversary and the one that we're pointing a finger and blaming. But what we're going for here is shared vulnerability. It's actually very, very vulnerable to say like, hey, I'm noticing my body wants something different right now. That's not me saying you're doing it wrong. Right. It's me saying I'm paying attention to myself. And, like you named, like, especially if we are vulva having bodies and bodies whose hormones are cycling, like things are changing all the time. It's the wild, wild west up in here. And so, at a certain point in our cycle, and whether we're talking about someone who is still cycling and you are having regular menstrual cycles, or you're in menopause or post-menopause in those different chapters, like micro and macro cycles, we need and want different things. And so you might want a really passionate, fierce, like, grab at me, give me that, like, manhandling energy one moment. And then the next, what you need is slowness and tenderness. And maybe sometimes you super, super, super want intercourse. You want to get railed. You want it like that. And then there's other moments where it's like, I think just a little oral might feel nice. Like I just want something gentle and soft. And what we need to do is cultivate our capacity to be vulnerable with ourselves first and foremost about disclosing that. It's a little bit of an identity crisis, right? Because it flies in the face of the performative people pleasing of like, yeah, I'm just available for like the whatever.
Whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
To me. Yeah.
And then we get to invite our partner's vulnerability. Like we actually get to give permission and be the model, the ambassador, if you will, for like, hey, like, maybe there's more available to us than we realize. Like, I want to grow with you. I want us both to feel amazing in our bodies. I want deeper intimacy. So none of this is because I'm wagging my finger criticizing. It's actually saying, I care. I care about you. I care about me. I care about how we grow together. Like, what if we learned more? What if we experimented more? What if we brought some curiosity and mixed things up? It's vulnerable and it's intimacy building.
That's a great reframe, the caring, because I think sometimes women can feel like, well, I'm asking for too much. Like I'm being too needy. I don't want to come off as like having all these needs and asks, but the reframe within is, I care about the way that we grow together, exactly what you just said. And I think that can be like, then it's more like a gift. I'm offering you some shift in what you're doing because it's a gift for both of us,
Yes. Feedback is a gift. Direction is a gift. And as somebody who spends her days attending to other people's bodies and sexual arousal, I can tell you, I would far rather have the person I'm touching give me some parameters. Give me some guidelines.
Yeah, totally.
Because this is another thing that happens, and nobody's at fault here. We tend to touch people the way we like to be touched. If we are thinking about it at all.
Yeah, it seems normal human thing
it seems
to do,
natural,
right?
Actually.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not educated, you're just going to try what works for you.
Or what you've seen has worked for others, often coming from porn. Yeah.
And so there's 8.2 billion people on this planet or something like that presently, which is just wild. Do you think that all of us want to be touched in the same way? No. So when our default position is each body has its preferences, each body needs and wants different things in different moments. Like when we just assume that that's the way of it, it creates a much more spacious baseline. And so for a lot of us, you might hear what I'm saying, and this is the moment of paradigm shift, like, oh, right. And so you get to now go take this to your partner, go take this to your lovers, go take this to whoever in your life you might want to share this with and be like, we do this thing kind of following a rote script, and I touch you the way that's familiar to me or that I like, but like I'll use a non-sexual example. When I was little, my mother used to like tickle the inside of my forearms. She loved this. It was her favorite thing. And it turned out that I did love it too. So I go to a lot of like light, tickly, feathery touch as something that feels amazing to me. Some people hate that.
Totally.
It is irritating nails on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
Is anybody wrong in that equation?
Right.
No. It's like, oh, okay. So Darshana's experience has her doing this thing. You don't happen to like it. Okay. Do you hear the levity I'm holding that with? No big, great. Let's try something else. Could you imagine if we brought that degree of lightheartedness and spaciousness to our erotic play and our sexual touch in particular? And we led with, oh, I'm curious. What do you like? I wonder what this feels like. How about we try it this way? Combine A, B, C. There's so much room to experiment. And that gets to be a source of a lot of joy and creativity. And sometimes you're gonna flubber it and it'll be awkward, or you really won't like something. Again, let's normalize that.
Mm-hmm.
We are not professional actors, who have been trained to read a particular script here. We are human beings, and it's very improvisational. And when we can relax into that instead of resisting it, when we can assume that that's going to be part of our experience, as opposed to freaking out when something doesn't go according to the proverbial script. It's like, we're just giving ourselves a lot more grace and opening up room for a lot more possibility for how we can access pleasure, intimacy, satisfaction, connection, the things that are presumably what we're here for.
Darshana, go ahead, Leah. And then I want to shift gears. I want to know about how the Netflix thing came about. I want to hear the story of that. So, but go for it, Leah. Carry on.
I'm really curious because, I'm curious if you ever end up working with the partner after you've worked with the first person, because, even if they come back and they're going to have these new tools and this understanding about what opens them, what closes them, making little shifts, they're coming very curious minded. They're working, hard on this type of communication that fosters joint curiosity. But still, the other person, it's so natural for us to feel insecure about our sexuality, about our sexual performance, our lack of confidence on what to do with our partner, feeling like we're klutzy, we're fucking it up, we're missing the mark. They're starting to get the flinch. You're already pretty attuned to someone's. You have to be really out to lunch if you're not noticing whether these little micro movement shifts in someone's system that kind of says, come closer, go away. Mm-hmm. And so even you have a great experience, you've got these new things, and they're still bumping up against all the stuff that is tender, that is confusing, that is fraught, that feels like high stakes. This sex is supposed to be this great adult playground, but so much of it feels like so much pressure, and there can be so many icky sensations when you're butting up against your competency, that I wonder how often does the other partner then need to go either get some coaching or come see you to go, I'm so fucked up over this.
Good question. Yeah.
It is a good question. And it's fair. I mean, I've had it in all directions. I have worked with some people individually who have then brought their partners in and they've done a chapter of work together. Some people not. I work with a lot of people who are dating or single or freshly out of a relationship. And so for them, the work is very much about self-discovery and self-intimacy that they then get to bring into future relationships.
Yeah.
I have had couples start together from the onset, and that can be really, really helpful. Like when they're both equally motivated. The thing is, even though that phrase just came out of my mouth, equally motivated, generally speaking, when I work with couples, one of them is a little keener, a little warmer to the idea, and the other a little or a lot more reticent. But what I've also seen happen even with some of those very same couples is the one who thought they weren't going to be as into it is the one who's like, Darshana,
totally. They end up having the biggest experiences. I have seen it over and over.
And I mean, I think, one more piece that I want to include there is I used the term earlier, like you can be an ambassador, you can bring this back to your partner, which is always a truth. We are not our partner's therapists. We are not our partner's teacher ultimately. Like, can we step into that role conscientiously and consensually? Sure. So a lot of this too is back to that term agency, to personal power. It's like, do this for you and see what happens. Like, it's not all that dissimilar. Like if if you're somebody who's engaged in any degree of personal growth work, or if you're, for instance, in recovery world, like in the 12-step world, or you're unwinding your codependency, you're dealing with your ism, whatever it is, we all know that like mostly what works is we evolve and the people around us take notice, and either they're going to lean toward our evolution and our growth and our change. Mm-hmm. And they might be slow. They might do it at their own pace, but it might be like, no, what? Mm-hmm. I see you changing over here. Mm-hmm. Like, this is intriguing. Like, and it becomes an invitation, and the person gets to opt in. They get to self-select. Like, yeah, you know what? I want what she's having. Yeah. It's also then, if not that scenario, it becomes a litmus test, right? Where like, if you're growing and evolving and you are extending invitations and demonstrating change, and your partner's digging their heels in and really unable or unwilling to go down that path with you, that's information, right? And I mean, I'm not telling you what you need to do with that information, because you do still have options, but it is information to have. Is this somebody that I want to keep journeying with? Are we going to be able to still find points of resonance and connection that have us mutually saying yes, even if this is not one of them?
Yeah.
Some of my clients, that's very much where they're at in a long-term relationship, where whatever their reasons are, they're their reasons, they're staying in it. And they may not feel sexually satisfied. And the reason they're coming to me is because they don't want to upset the apple cart in their marriage, but they don't want this part of themselves to just die.
Right.
And they want to have a safe, sacred, loving space where they get to be in their bodies and be in their connection and cultivate that self-intimacy. And then maybe, speaking of self-intimacy, using that as a turn of phrase for masturbation, solo sex. Or maybe you're in a non-monogamous dynamic where you have other outlets for exploring your sexuality that an anchor or primary life partner may or may not be included in. Like, we've got options,
including not continuing to walk together, including going, I love you, but I'm not willing to do it the old way. I've changed too much. And if these conditions no longer work for you, they're no longer working for me. And so,
100%.
I always tell people, look, this does not promise to save your relationship. It promises to bring you closer to your truth.
No, I mean, I've had multiple clients exit relationships through our work together, in the same way that I've had clients recognize a shift in gender identity or sexual orientation or relationship style. I mean, when I say self-intimacy, all of that is included. Yeah. How intimately can you know yourself?
Right.
Yeah. I love that part of the work. I mean, I feel like that's what makes it so magical, is like you get to discover the deepest essence within yourself and really live from that authentic truth. I mean, that's real sovereignty. It's so beautiful to witness, and things have to crumble and things have to fall away in order for that to happen, when there's been layers and layers of, I should be this way and I should act this way. I mean, you went through it yourself, Darshana, you went through the whole, many times. We all have. Like, it's such an important part. I feel like I'm kind of going through it right now. It's good times, Okay. I want to shift gears because I selfishly want to hear the story about how Netflix came to you and found you and said, hey, come be on Gwyneth Paltrow's Sex, Love, and Goop.
I mean, I don't want to spoil it by saying, like, it may not be as exciting as you think. I got an email. While it was summer of 2020, and y'all remember what was happening summer of 2020. Like, we're in active quarantine, like life is locked down. Everybody's figuring out, like, what do we do now that we can't be together? And an email floats into my inbox saying, like, we want to talk to you about a Netflix show. And I'm like, is this a hoax?
Right.
Wow. Yeah. I would have thought the same thing.
Is this a scam?
Yeah.
And it was not. It was not
That's
a joke.
So cool.
It was the production company that had reached out. And so it didn't say Netflix in the email, like the domain. It didn't even say anything about Goop or Gwyneth Paltrow initially. It was just like, we want to discuss this project with you. And I'm like, okay. And I remember distinctly, because that summer, one of my dearest friends had a baby right before lockdown started, and they were on the East Coast and I was on the West Coast. I'm like, I'm coming. And I got in the car and I drove across the country, because what else were you going to do? Right.
Right.
And so
great timing. You're available.
I'm sitting in a little brownstone in Brooklyn, New York, like visiting them, taking this call. It was a Zoom. And it was like, oh, so here's the show that we are going to be creating. And what it was is, I believe this is accurate to say, Gwyneth Paltrow had a prior Netflix show. I think it was called The Goop Lab. Yeah. And there was one episode of that series that focused on explorations of sex and intimacy. And it featured Betty Dodson, who has since passed away. And it was a very compelling episode. And I think that they realized, like, oh, this is getting a lot of attention. And so there was then a 6-part series, which is Sex, Love, and Goop, that was created. And it featured 5 experts and 5 real couples paired up and working together, and I got chosen to be one of the experts, and it
So
was
great.
a life and game-changing experience. It
I
was so
bet.
beautiful. I worked with like
Oh.
the most lovely couple in the world, Camille
They
and
were so
Chandra. Like,
sweet.
oh
Yeah.
my God, like
Yeah.
amazing.
And they did, I feel like the show did such a great job depicting, like highlighting and bringing in I'm sure you worked with them for much longer than what we saw on the show, but like, though I feel like the show did a good job of weaving in, all the most important pieces.
I could not agree more. And I got to say, like, I was pretty freaking nervous about that because, yes, we worked to get you see, I think my screen time comes in at around 40 minutes spread out over 3 episodes,
which is like a 3-month journey.
Well, I wasn't, we did it as an intensive, but so I was with them for days. And doing, and there were so many different parts. There was all the prep work we did over Zoom, like before we came together during lockdown, where it's like COVID tests and masks, and the production company was amazing.
Wow.
The editing was amazing. I was, much like you said, Dr. Willow, I like completely agree. They did a beautiful job of taking this much bigger arc and showing it to people in a really concise and impactful way. And it's like forever, this will be something I have the honor of having been a part of, because so many people, I'm not exaggerating when I say, me personally, I did not get a single solitary negative message, trolling, like none of that stuff.
Wow, that's wonderful.
All I received was praise.
Wow.
All I received.
That is amazing.
So good.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. Because I'm sure, I mean, if it were me, I would be going through oh my God, I'm going to not love that part of the journey, is getting, hate and, negativity slamming here and there. So
what a gift.
Was there anything that wasn't in the episodes that you wish would have been?
Oh, wow.
Good question.
That is a good question. I mean, I'll be honest, it's been 4 years.
A while.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, do I remember all of it?
Right. Sure.
I mean, I don't know that it's I wish was included. It's simply, I'll say, like, there's a lot you didn't see. And some of that had to do with like the very, like, not the big flashy moments. A lot of it was like the smaller, tender moments, the conversations that were happening. You do see on the screen Camille like get activated, and me supporting her in settling down and coming back and like really reaffirming her boundaries. And like, that was a much bigger process than the little glimpse of it that is on the screen, because what happened there is she recognized, like, it's very actually a beautiful example of what we've been talking about here. She was performing. She was going along with what she thought should happen, how it should look. And okay, like, I'll forget my discomfort. I'm just going to keep going. And can you imagine doing that with cameras on you to boot? Like,
jeez, I know, because you are being watched. Well, you did a great job.
Thank you. And I think it's not, I think this made it into like what you said, where I said, where it's like, do you want to put your clothes back on? Like, do you want to de-escalate what's going on? And it's like, you could see the light bulb go off where it's like, wait, I
have permission to do that.
I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful.
So powerful. Yeah. If y'all haven't seen it, if y'all haven't seen Sex, Love, and Goop, just put it at the top of your to-do list. Go watch Darshana. And the other sexperts are amazing as well. Jaya and Ian are on there. I don't know the names of the other two, but there was one woman who worked with another couple and had this, they were like an older couple, been together for a long time. She had them crawling around on the ground, growling at each other. I mean, there was good fodder on there.
That's Amina Peterson. And then Michaela Boehm was also one of the other experts. Yeah.
And then there was someone doing IFS.
She was doing family constellations.
Oh, okay. A little
different from IFS. Yeah, that was a really cool one because it was kind of like an outlier in a way. Of like,
it wasn't so sexual.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Psychological.
But it was what that couple needed.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have the episodes in the show notes, so go head over to the website if you want to just make it easy on yourself, including how to work with you. We'll have all of your information there in the show notes as well. Thank you so much. This has been such a lovely conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Total pleasure.
Okay, friends. Well, the show's not over. The dish is coming up next, so please stay tuned.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
Oh, that was such a
That
nice
was
conversation.
so good. I know.
Yeah,
It's just
I
like
felt
talking
like-
to a sister.
I know. It feels like it's just such a common
An-
language, very
Another
similar.
temple sister. Yeah.
Yeah, like all
Super
the
nice.
all the alignment of tools is just very
Uh-huh.
symbiotic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just love her. Very holistic perspective and take and on, how to help people transform inside of their sexuality because as we know from all the work we do, it is such a root part of ourselves that we often we sweep it under the rug.
Yeah,
We
we
look
minimize it.
over it. We minimize it. We make it not a big, I'll just keep
Or we
going in this one
overinflate
direction.
it.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's like
totally.
sometimes it's either or, like this inflation of like it's the most important thing ever and there's so much drama around it, or we minimize it and we suppress it and
Mhm.
we're not living a full life because of the neglect.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely. I do, from all the different healing modalities that I've studied and practiced over the years, I feel like the sexual healing piece and the spiritual expansion that comes from it and the physical health that comes from it, it's one of the most efficient, effective, and fast tracks to healing that I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really magical. I had a really magical experience with somebody new that I was working with. And when you see the connections that line up and you see their eyes shift and change and the ahas and like bridges are made that had never connected before, it's just the most fulfilling thing to be a part of. It's so
It is.
humbling and so
Yeah.
special and
Yeah.
so heart opening.
Uh-huh.
It's not just about being sexually adequate. It's not
Right.
just about finding sexual confidence. It's finding yourself. It's like coming
Yeah.
home to your heart when
Yeah.
everything starts to get embodied. You're no longer separate from this thing called sex or this thing between your legs. You start to realize that it's a full part of you. And when that starts to merge and with everything else, what a gift. And no wonder we want that for everyone. We want
I
everyone to
know.
have that.
I know.
Sometimes, especially when I first got done with my trainings, we were warned, don't become a born again tantrika, where you are like pressing the good word on everyone, going, you need this, you need this, you need this.
Uh-huh.
And over the years, I've had to temper some of that enthusiasm to go, not everyone's dharma, not everyone's karma is meant to go down this track. But man, when you see the light turn on, you can't help but, pray for every being to be connected to themselves in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing to witness people step into their fullness in that way and to be able to offer that to people. I often will say it's like giving someone ice cream for the first time. Like,
It's taking somebody
they're like,
swimming for the first
wow,
time.
this thing tastes amazing. It's like,
Yeah.
I've never had it. It's just to see people have experiences that they've never had before, that their bodies are totally capable, their psyches are totally capable of. And it's such a gift. And I really loved, I mean, I could watch that whole Sex, Love, and Goop thing all over again.
Yeah,
'Cause
that,
it was
I would love
so
to watch it
good.
again. It was really
Yeah.
good. It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
All
Well, thanks
right.
everyone for tuning in. Please remember to comment, share this episode, help us grow our viewership by spreading the word that you are a Sex Reimagined fan. We appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was hosted by Tantric Sex Master Coach and Positive Psychology Facilitator Leah Piper, as well as by Chinese and Functional Medicine Doctor and Taoist Sexology Teacher Dr. Willow Brown. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.